The Orgasm Cult, Part 2. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. Previously, I introduced to you the organisation that had been labelled the Orgasm Cult, founded by Nicole which showed various aspects which would support the presence of the operation of narcissists. This arose from a report which had been compiled by a journalist working for Bloomberg back in 2018. We now fast forward and find ourselves earlier this year, where a journalist called Megan Agnew from the Times newspaper actually attended one of the communes. Let's find out what her experience was and also what this tells us in relation to the allegation that this is a cult and that there may be narcissists at work. 150 miles north of San Francisco is a town called Philo, population 319. If you were driving through one Wednesday evening in December, you might have spotted two British women, a photographer and a journalist, sitting in a car outside the Minimart, trying to process what had just happened. We had spent 2 days on The Land, a 160-acre monastery nearby, home to an organisation some have called an orgasm cult. They were two of the most unsettling, disorientating days of my life. Rachel, the photographer, and I were separated from the moment we arrived. Remember, separation of an individual from others is an easier way of controlling that person. And we were escorted everywhere we went. Assertion of control. People I met on the land were glassy-eyed, blissed out and grinning. Many talked about a practice that will save us, promised gain, invented by their guru, Nicole, who in June was charged with running a conspiracy involving forced labour. She faces 20 years in a US prison, if found guilty. Daydone, age 56, founded the sexual wellness company OneTaste in 2004 in San Francisco. She wrote instructions for orgasmic meditation, OM. A woman lies back and has her clitoris stroked by a man wearing latex gloves for 15 minutes. She trademarked the technique and sold courses for thousands of dollars. OM, she said, will one day be as mainstream as yoga. The company grew quickly, making $9.4 million in 2016. Daydone received praise from Gwyneth Paltrow and Khloe Kardashian. By 2018, 35,000 people attended events in cities including London. Hundreds moved into OM houses, communes where they could OM twice in the morning and twice in the evening. Many gave up their jobs to sell courses. According to federal prosecutors, however, it wasn't a wellness company at all. Instead, they alleged Daydone and her former head of sales, Rachel Chervitz, 43, targeted vulnerable people, exploitation, absence of emotional empathy, by advertising that the company's teachings could repair sexual trauma, promised gain, induce members to take on debt to pay for OM courses, lack of emotional empathy, withheld wages, lack of emotional empathy, sense of entitlement, lack of accountability, and isolated them from the outside world while demanding absolute commitment, assertion of control. It alleges they used abusive employment practices, subjecting members to economic, sexual, emotional, and psychological abuse, surveillance, indoctrination, and intimidation. Members were groomed and pressed to have sex with other members and prospective investors, prosecutors allege. OneTaste imploded in 2018 when Bloomberg published an investigation accusing the organisation of resembling a prostitution ring. It was a religion, one former employee told Bloomberg. Orgasm was God, and Nicole was like Jesus. OneTaste went quiet. It shut down all centres and courses. A group of about 30 senior practitioners, including Daydone, retreated to The Land. Then came a BBC podcast, The Orgasm Cult, a Netflix documentary, Orgasm Inc., a Vice documentary, and a Playboy investigation. In June 2023, the FBI stormed The Land. Daydone and Chervitz were arrested. The company has spent about $15 million on legal fees since 2018, suing the BBC, potential nullification of threat to control, suing Netflix, potential nullification of threat to control, suing a former member, potential nullification of threat to control, being sued by another former member for alleged sex trafficking, and fighting the criminal trial. There is no trial date yet. Daydone and Cherwitz deny all allegations and, on January the 16th, submitted a motion to dismiss the indictment, saying they remain in the dark as to how the government alleges they might have violated the law. Remember, this was written back in January this year. Now, for the first time, OneTaste has agreed to let a journalist through the gates of the land and promised the journalist an audience with Daydone, her first interview since the indictment. She wants to tell her side of the story to demonstrate her innocence. And so, one Tuesday morning in December, we drove through Philo, past the minimart and turned left. "Hey," says a man wearing wooden beaded bracelets as he gets out of an SUV. "Rachel and I have just driven down a long track and found ourselves at a dead end." "I'm Bob," he says, grinning. "You're in the wrong place. I'll show you in." Rachel looks at me and says, "How did he know where we were?" We follow Bob through some electric gates and over a bridge, the same route taken by the fleet of FBI vehicles last summer. We pass a vegetable patch, chickens, turkeys, and a meadow that sits beneath ancient oak trees. Alongside the rumbling Navarro River, we are in the Anderson Valley, Californian wine country. At the top of a hill is a collection of chalets where the remaining Ohm group live, swapping between dorms and shared houses, with just a few belongings between them. No one can tell me exactly how you qualify to live here. Vagueness, maintenance of control. The 26 people who do are on what is called the Retreat Program and work for the company as lawyers, publishers, videographers, marketers, Ohm teachers, gardeners, or at the non-profit outreach program Feeding the Homeless. Some live here part-time, for others it is their permanent home. They pay $1,700 a month in rent, which covers food, board and practice, yoga and spiritual guidance from Daydone, who lives in her own house, set apart, and 4 sessions of orgasmic meditation a day. Most appear to be wealthy. One man used to work at Apple. Another was an executive at the international gym franchise CrossFit. There are millionaire entrepreneurs, the daughter of the inventor of the Polly Pocket toy, former lawyers from Magic Circle firms, and a Hollywood actress. Members of the public can also book to stay for days, weeks or months, with places available at about £500 a night. We arrive at a converted barn. The upstairs is for Ohm sessions. Downstairs is where the company broadcasts hours and hours of its teaching. This morning, in front of an audience of about 20 residents on the land, stands Vanessa Lenges, 38, an actress who appeared in the US comedy drama Glee. Without further ado, Lenges says, live streaming onto YouTube, Instagram and Zoom, "I give you Nicole Daydone." And there she is, walking onto the stage in a fitted orange cocktail dress, her hair tongued and shiny, lips glossed and pillowy. The audience is beaming. She is the reason they are all here, and the reason I am too. This is her weekly Sutra session, in which she delivers a sermon inspired by the Eros Sutras, the scriptures she wrote that lay out the Ohm principles, a blueprint for how to live a life of intimacy, connection, and eroticism. Soulmaker Press, the group's in-house publisher, has produced 10 books to date. They are all written by her. Daydone is a practice speaker, leaving long, pregnant pauses that everyone waits for her to fill. "I broke open into that silence," she says. "Suddenly, it was like, this is what it's supposed to feel like. This is what I feel like in my own body on my own terms." The room laughs and nods as she continues in this vein. It's time for questions. Hands shoot up. One woman says the talk made her cry. "I watch it again later on YouTube. I still don't understand a word she said." That suggests may well be all word salad. We eat tacos and black beans at 3 long tables in a dining hall at lunchtime. There is a seating plan and bottles of San Pellegrino. Residents take it in turns to do chores, cooking, laying the table, doing the washing up. Daydone arrives. She seems reserved, though confident, her stance solid, her shoulders square, coy, a little removed. People approach her, and she looks them deep in the eyes, touching their hands gently and not looking anywhere else. Use of the stare, perhaps? She gives me a shy wave as she sits down, and I'm told by her publicist I'll interview her tomorrow. Daydone was born in Los Gatos, California, into a bohemian political household and brought up largely by her single mother. She graduated from San Francisco State University with a degree in gender communications and semantics in 1994. San Francisco at the time was an orgy of dot-com cash. In a much-repeated story where details vary, she claims she met a man, in some tellings a Buddhist monk, revision of history, at a party who persuaded her to try an ancient sexuality practice known as deliberate orgasm. Something happened, she said. The big traffic jam in my head stopped. She took classes with Victor Barranco, an entrepreneur from Oakland, California, who practiced public clitoral stroking, and founded the Northern Californian commune Lafayette Morehouse, labelled by journalists as a sex cult, though the group insists all research has been carried out between consenting adults. In 1998, she joined a splinter group in the Bay Area, the Welcomed Consensus, that also promoted deliberate orgasm. There, she met Robert Candell, a Silicon Valley financier. Candell and Daydone decided to give orgasms the startup treatment to take the practice mainstream, and so founded OneTaste. For the method to be trademarked and marketable, it needed to be formulaic. The woman asks a man if he wants to own. He doesn't have to be her sexual or romantic partner. She lies down, unclothed from the waist down, her legs butterflied. The man is fully clothed, wearing latex gloves. His right index finger strokes the top left quadrant of her clitoris. Both people's attention must be focused wholly on the stroke. It lasts exactly 15 minutes. The founders insisted, as they still do, that this wasn't sex, but an everyday spiritual practice, such as yoga. Grandiosity. The first OneTaste members moved into a warehouse in San Francisco, sheets hanging between each bed. Daydone was at its centre. Everyone treated me like a guru, she said. I'd wake up and people would come sit on my bed. Grandiosity. Persephone, not her real name, joined the group in 2003, having recently quit her job and marriage. I was mesmerised by Nicole when I first met her, she tells me on the phone from the United States, but she's a master manipulator. She can read a person and know exactly how to play them. She became addicted to the continuous buzz of orgasms and soon moved into a commune. People were high all the time. Not from drugs, but from being stroked, she says. It was used as a way to control people. Members weren't told to cut off ties with family, Persephone says, but family members can't relate to you. They're like, what the hell are you talking about? The longer you were there, the harder it was to think yourself out, she adds. Nicole talks about all of these grandiose things, about how they're changing consciousness, so you think, maybe I'm really doing something important here, being made to feel special, part of the means of controlling individuals. Persephone says she eventually woke up feeling she was being used. She left the community. This is what Nicole does, she says. She makes you think you want to live there, that it's your choice, but it's not. It's grooming. As I've explained before, one of the most powerful methods of manipulation is to get somebody to do something where they believe that they chose to do it. Daydone said in response to the allegations of manipulation, that is the antithesis of everything I believe in and worked for. Denial. In 2014, Daydone bought out Candell and became sole shareholder of OneTaste. The company spread across 39 cities globally. Every morning, employees had a sync-up, an online meeting where each city would compare sales of OM courses. Targets were met only 36% of the time. Back at lunch on the land, I am placed opposite Rachel Kane, a 34-year-old with dark hair in tight natural curls. She worked at the law firm Clifford Chance in Sydney until 2016, when she attended an OM workshop. She signed up for the coaching program and every month flew 14 hours to San Francisco. She quit her law job and moved into an OM house. Now she is one of the company's lawyers. Everything that's changing the world is seen as being weird at first, she tells me. Next to me is Anjuli Ayer, 42, who went even further. She bought the company from Daydone in 2017, less than a year after attending her first OM, and is now the CEO. Ayer, who has short pixie crop hair and wears military boots and a parka, says OMing rid her of the symptoms of an autoimmune disease. So I started taking courses and did as many as I could, she says. Then Nicole just happened to be looking not to be the owner of the company anymore, because she's a visionary, and she was never really meant to run a big business. It was awesome, continues Ayer, grinning. Awesome. Daydone sold OneTaste for $12 million to Ayer, her brother Austin Ayer, 39, who seems only to serve people food, and Amanda Dunham, 34, who chops apples. All three are OM practitioners, and all three invested family money. They also bought the land for $4 million. Within months of the acquisition, the allegations began. Former employees told Bloomberg they were encouraged to use sex to hook customers, that they were made to take out huge loans to pay for courses to ascend spiritually. Other media investigations termed OneTaste a destructive sex cult. In a claim fully denied by the company, the BBC podcast alleged that the group arranged for men to have sex with one member in order to somehow clear her history of childhood sexual abuse. It is alleged they told her the tears were just the orgasm coming out. OneTaste was not a destructive sex cult or any sort of cult, as the term is commonly understood, the claimants submitted in their legal case against the BBC. It was a collaborative organisation that promoted well-being and practices of self-care and empowerment for modern women, with decision-making power decentralised among the senior leaders. It continued that all residency in OM houses was voluntary, with informed consent and safe words at the centre of the instructions, with no one exploited or manipulated into having sex with anyone else. No one sought to cut off staff or practitioners from friends or family. Denial. Among the chaos, OneTaste was restructured and reassembled as various companies and non-profits. The Institute of OM runs the online learning platform. Daydone is on paper divorced from it entirely. The word OneTaste is almost everywhere gone. The Institute of OM has started hosting introductory sessions in hip event spaces in London, New York and Los Angeles. Alongside free content, it is also sending memberships to the online platform, $149.99 a year or $695 for 4 sessions. In 2023, the Institute of OM's revenue was $32,000. In 2022, it was $377. We're much more mission-based, Ayer says. None of us are here to make money. That afternoon, Ayer shows the journalist into her cabin overlooking a river valley heavy with fog. She and Kevin Williams, age 47, a former corporate lawyer in London and now the company's general legal counsel, follow me inside. To my slight surprise, they sit down at my table. OneTaste later claimed that this meeting and its location was on a schedule they provided. That was news to me. Revision of history. They want to brief me before my meeting with Daydone tomorrow. What is her role, I ask, now she is not an owner, shareholder or CEO. She's the author of the sutras. She's the inspiration for everything. She's the source of all of the principles and the foundation of what we're doing right now, Ayer says. She advises us as a visionary. We're deeply inspired by every single book and every single thing she creates. She's a great finder, William says, grinning. She'll be like, check out Bob Thurman's podcast. He's a Buddhist academic. And that was my favourite podcast of last year. I was like, Bob Thurman is awesome. Later, the journalist finds William's blog post from when he first joined OneTaste in 2014. I'm getting a lot of ass, he wrote. People seem to enjoy being violated on a Friday night. That shows you a particular attitude. What is this group, I ask? A religion, a cult, a company, a group of friends getting off? We're not a religion, Ayer says. We are a movement. William picks up. We are also plural. I'm one person, but I have a job doing what I love for a company that I love, and I live in a monastery where I get to practice. And I really do feel those separate but connected things. It's a choose-your-own-adventure environment. And a lot of us choose a lot of depth in it. Aya gives it another go. This whole thing is a movement of a certain number of people core to it who are furthering these principles. So it's a belief system. Yes, it's a set of principles, but it's also something that's scaled and monetized like a company. I say, Did we answer your question? Why is the word cult used so often, I ask? I mean, Aya pauses, to see it labelled something that people think is negative is just completely misunderstood. Then in another way, I'm like, okay, Apple is a cult, CrossFit is a cult. These other things get called cults because people love them and deeply benefit from them. Then they get labelled something that's seen as negative, when it's really just people devoted to something that they believe in. The journalist, OneTaste was not, is not, and never has been a cult. Aya and Williams slide across a pack of paper, 7 pages of text, that they say I should read before I meet Daydone. Nicole, really, took a lot of care writing this. Aya says, her voice quiet. This is her vision. Aya walks me back in the evening to the dining hall where I see Rachel, the photographer, from afar. After we leave the land, Rachel tells me she kept getting picked up by people taking her to different locations to photograph and was surprised to find them often driving her car, lack of boundary recognition control. The seating plan ensures Daydone is not near me. Opposite me is Joanna Van Vleck, 40. She grins with skin flushed. She has just owned her 4th orgasm of the day. In 2009, she founded a retail company. It was subsequently sold on for $350 million to the American department store Nordstrom. Hearing that orgasmic meditation was going to be huge, she asked Daydone for a role as her head of marketing. I didn't own for the first 6 months, she says, but the joke was on me because it changed my life. Van Vleck then served as the company's president for several years. It is alleged that during this time, OneTaste used predatory tactics, telling people that they could reach a sort of spiritual enlightenment by purchasing more courses. Today, she tells me that refunds were given whenever anyone asked. The most difficult part is feeling so misunderstood, she says. It's like, I'm trying to be an apple, and someone's like, she pauses, oh, you're an asparagus. And you're like, that's not it at all. There are no children allowed here. From my conversations with people, their children are either grown up or they don't have children at all. Many of these people seem to have dated or been engaged to each other. I ask about the members who have said they became estranged from their families. Aya, sitting next to me, tells me that it is part of the practice to stay connected and work through any issues. All of us have had different experiences, she says. My family has been incredibly supportive. Shall we take you back? We walk in the dark. Where's my photographer? Rachel's cabin, I ask. She's near you, is all they say. I shut the door behind me. There is no lock and no blinds on the windows. One kitchen cupboard is empty except for a box of latex gloves. The mugs have been cleared, the fruit platter taken away. Day 2. My alarm goes off at 5:30 a.m. Aya comes to collect me, driving us 45 seconds to the converted barn. Upstairs in the loft, there are 7 yoga mats laid out next to one another in 2 rows on the floor. It's warm. Caves. I sit on 7 women lying down on pillows, including the actress Longees, and the women I spoke to at dinner. The men sit alongside them, latest gloves on. Eli, who used to work at Apple, Bob, the manager of the land who showed us in, and Hesham, the company videographer. Daydone is absent. She doesn't practice with the group anymore, only privately with her one OM partner in New York. Sitting at the front, the senior practitioner, Aubrey Fuller, instructs the men on how to amend their strokes, whether to go faster, slower, shorter, longer. Eli keeps looking me in the eye, which is unsettling. It's quieter than I thought, more like being in a yoga class than at a sex party. Toes scrunched up, heavy breathing, women asking for adjustments from their partner. It is a strikingly intimate act, men looking straight into a woman's genitals, stroking them. So it unnerves me that everyone here insists that it's not a sexual experience at all. Delusion. That you can do it with anyone at any time. The alarm goes off after 15 minutes. I can't tell if they've reached climax or not. I'm driven back to my chalet through the drizzle. Someone has left 3 umbrellas for me leaning against the door. In the afternoon, after a lunch of spiced chicken and bean salad, Aya walks me to the converted barn where there are 2 chairs and 2 side tables, a cheese platter on each. It's not bad, huh? Daydone says as she walks in. The room is emptied of helpers. Just her publicist Ian and lawyer Julia remain. She's tall and wears a big knitted cardigan over a silk dress. She crosses her arms into her lap and looks up through her eyelashes, seeming to pull herself away out of shyness. It is a noticeable shift from when she was last in this room preaching her sutras. Daydone splits her time between here and Harlem, New York, she tells me, and her friends pay for her living costs since her assets were frozen by the government in June 2023. Marcus Ratnathikam, a member who lives part-time on the land, secured her bail by putting up his $2 million property in California as collateral. I love it here, she continues. When we first stepped foot on the land, I had a vision. I always have these visions and they sound crazy, and then over a period of time, they happen. Grandiosity. Why was it so important to have the land? So I have this idea. There is a 7-second pause. We're going to have to figure it out as a world in a way that's sustainable. If the whole idea is to get out of suffering and hit a state of flourishing, then you have to take a different approach. I must look lost. When we talk, everything is going to be up here. She puts one hand level with her eyes. But then it has really deep roots. Word salad. Throughout the 2-hour interview, Daydone chases herself through thoughts, moving on without quite finishing the last one. She compares herself to the Buddha and Elon Musk. Triangulation. She describes her role in the group as the older person who inspires, and her teachings as central to the community. That's why I was so determined to write the sutras, she says. I'd like to see this alive in 500 years, and I'm going to die at some point. It has to be written down for that to happen. Protection of legacy, nullification of threat to control. The group, she says, is about as far from religion as you can get. Religions have prescriptions. There's a dogma and belief system. But aren't the sutras dogma? Have you read them? Nobody has to read the sutras, but if you do read the sutras, read them, if you would, because the way that they're laid out is how to use the practice as a scientific method for personal inquiry. Daydone was an only child, a natural leader who says she didn't want to be followed. At 27, she received a call from her father, from whom she was estranged, and found out he was dying of cancer in prison. He had been convicted of molesting girls. All of it, Daydone says, was news to her. Now, such behaviour, although we don't know a lot about the father, might suggest that he is a narcissist, and that might suggest the possibility of a genetic predisposition that could be passed along. She also worked, I beg your pardon, Daydone says all of this was news to her. I thought, okay, I have this pain, how can I use it to bring benefit to others? I've been on that path since. Saviour mentality. Daydone trained in Zen Buddhism and nearly became a nun. She also worked for 6 months as a stripper and an escort. I wanted to know things I didn't understand before combining the 2 fields of research to make OneTaste. There is nothing similar to sex about oming, she claims. I said it yesterday. Sex is the instrumentation and om is the silence. It's an attention training practice. Isn't it dangerous, I suggest, to pretend that something that is physically the same as sex isn't sex? How would that be dangerous? Because people underestimate its potential to cause harm. In most sexual activities I'm familiar with, it does not have a rigorous protocol. Oming is taking sexual energies and repurposing them for consciousness or attention. It's hard to decouple, I know. Daydone stands by her innocence. She describes her predicament as being cancelled. She denies the allegations of forceful sale tactics, saying it is batshit, that women were encouraged to look sexy in order to sell courses to rich men. Is she interested in money? I dated rich men in my life, so if I wanted to be rich, I would have just got married. She also distances herself from what allegedly happened in the Ohm houses. She claims the houses were set up by licensed Ohm practitioners and were not the company's responsibility. I know what I saw, but I don't know what I didn't see, she says. A group of meditators who decided that they want to live together. I don't know that Buddhism is responsible for what happens in that house. She continues, I think people go nuts when a clitoris is involved. We need to talk about the C word, I say. Cult. How does she feel about it being used? Oh, I love it. Then she laughs. I'm joking. I mean, she sighs dramatically. I don't know if you can feel who I am over here. She softens her voice. Just a human, but if not, I'll explain. This is my life's work. I'll take my last breath during this. And then to have it reduce. It was devastating. It was terrible. We could not have been more out in the open in the world as a business. Grandiosity. True believer. Daydone believes that one day everyone will realise the persecution of OneTaste was all some huge mistake. I'm in the deep-seated belief that Ohm will be seen as a very powerful modality, and that will become clear. A lot will become clear. It sounds as if she sees herself as the martyr. Well, we hope that's not the case, that I am sacrificed. We'll see. I believe that the truth prevails. She pauses. There wasn't a lot of profile in this, she says with a smile. I thought this was a profile about my work. That was what I heard. By which I think she means she wanted to talk about the content of the sutras, her belief systems, Daydone as a theologian, rather than the charges that will put her in the dock of a federal court. It's getting dark. For the first time, I'm allowed to walk back by myself to my chalet. I text Rachel and she comes to pick me up. As we're reversing, a guy I don't recognise turns up in a truck. I'll show you out, he says. He leads us down the single track and through the gate, which shuts behind us, seeing us onto the main road. We pull over at the minimart in Philo and walk in. The door clangs. Its customers are in old beaten-up jeans, plaid coats and caps. I ask people in there if they know the people on the land. We don't see them, says one woman. No contact with them, nothing. The further away we drive, the more it feels like a different world, a place where I was given everything, where I had to give up all control, where people arrived and disappeared, give me answers I never really understood about why they were there and what it all meant. It felt like a monastery run like a startup, a religion with sales targets, a mix of money, ecstasy, intimacy, community, and, according to the FBI's case, coercion and crime. But the gates are open, and there are no locks on the doors. So why do people stay? I ask Persephone, the former member. Because it's a cult, she says. They've been brainwashed. It unmoors you from your own instinct, and so people get lost. Really, really lost. So that is the report from earlier this year, which provides you with more understanding about what is taking place there, and of course the behaviours of Nicole Daydone. But there's more to consider, which is of interest in relation to legal action that has been taken, something I'll be addressing in the next part. What are your thoughts so far in relation to what you have heard? Do you think that it's a cult with a charismatic narcissist at its centre? Do you think that it's actually just simply an alternative way of looking at life, of seeking a different way of doing things, and that in effect, if people are enjoying it, where's the harm? Do you believe those that have got out and said that it is like a cult, or are they just disgruntled former members, irritated because it wasn't for them? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.